Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button below. Remember to click that notification bell as well, so you never miss a new upload. The story begins with thoughts of the protagonist. Presently, he contemplates a life free from the confines of school, cram school, and graduate school. He firmly believes that he will never return to the realm of education and has no intention of studying anywhere else. Riding alongside a man who gestures ahead, the protagonist learns that they are nearing the esteemed Imperial Magic Academy, Einrogard. The man, Aurarlong, once a seemingly useless old knight, feels honored to accompany the young master and witness his growth into a fine individual. However, the protagonist perceives Einrogard's actions as if the boy himself has no desire to pursue knowledge. Despite his intention to break away from the pursuit of learning in this lifetime, the protagonist finds himself reminiscing about his last graduation. While his classmates rejoice at the end of their schooling, he can't fathom the fact that they have truly graduated. He recalls instances where he declined invitations to join prestigious clubs and assured his professor that he would complete assignments by evening, knowing he would sacrifice sleep once again. Just as they endured eating the same kimbap for weeks, his classmates believe that every student goes through such experiences, but the protagonist feels somehow different from them. Walking alongside his friend, they engage in life's conversations, with the friend suggesting the idea of pursuing a second education, claiming that student life suits the protagonist. However, the protagonist dismisses the notion, deeming it too much for him. He sets forth on his own path, vowing to live for himself and distance himself from any other educational institution. Suddenly, a truck approaches from behind, its brakes failing. The protagonist watches as the truck hurtles toward him at tremendous speed, ultimately colliding with him. The certificates and diplomas he once held dear now lay as useless scraps of paper, but his resolve remains unaltered even in his reincarnated state. Reborn as Lihan Vardanis, the third son of the Empire's prominent magical lineage, he retains memories of his past life. The realization that he was reborn into a powerful and wealthy family brings tears to his eyes, perhaps as a reward for his efforts in his previous life. However, he soon discovers that he was mistaken. The new family adheres to a rule where only the first son inherits, leaving the rest to forge their own paths. Two objectives lie before him, one held by a man and the other by a young gentleman. Aurarlong, the man, can hardly believe that the young boy has requested to be taught how to use magic. Considering there is nothing else to be done, he agrees, supported by the family in their endeavors. The protagonist yearns to become a magician rather than a knight, believing it to be the best path. When questioned if his ambition is too great, he receives praise for his intelligence, with the man stating that most noble children possess unnecessary ambition from a young age. The protagonist's future plans involve a prudent path through the ranks of knights and adventurer guilds, as even the imperial family values experienced wizards. Having experienced the life of a graduate student, he remains a realist. The Imperial Grand Magic Academy, Einrogard, stands as an institution that trains aspiring mages. Returning to their arrival at the academy, the protagonist realizes that he still harbors no desire to study and will have to endure several years there. Despite the patriarch's recognition of his talent, the protagonist remains skeptical, as he has been forbidden to practice magic due to its dangers for children. The man with the horses informs them that they cannot proceed any further, halting their journey. As carriages pass by, voices urge people to disperse, as they carry esteemed individuals, a duke's daughter and the imperial son. The protagonist ponders the considerable gathering of people, noting that Einrogard is a place one must enter alone. A worried and angry individual behind him expresses distress, as he won't be able to sleep without his servants, whom he considers indispensable. The protagonist understands the sentiment and jests at the nobleman's expense. The nobleman then approaches a girl, proclaiming that, in the name of equality, the academy even accepts slaves, vowing to file a complaint on behalf of his family. Curious about the girl's response, the protagonist witnesses her employ mind manipulation magic, leaving him remorseful for underestimating the capabilities of these individuals who can wield magic against the nobles. Thus, confirming the rumors he had heard, including the presence of monsters within the academy. If he were to die, they would bury him in the mountains. The gates of the academy swung open, and a voice greeted them, saying, "Welcome to Einrogard, you foolish steelheads." The young man realized that this was the rumored monstrous magical pressure emanating from the headmaster. Everyone present froze with tension as the director instructed them to enter the academy alone. However, he made it clear that if they refused to obey the rules, he would ensure they followed them. He went on to explain why they were all standing there, criticizing their foolishness and urging them to move forward. He repeated the magical invocation 3 times. It was our hero's first day at the most prestigious magic academy in the Empire, but he had an uneasy feeling about it. As students walked down the corridor, they were indignant at the way the headmaster addressed them. The young man was approached by a girl named Yonner Macon, whose family, like his own Vardanian household, was known for its magicians. The young man was pleased to meet her and asked how he could assist her. It turned out that His Highness, the Prince of the Empire, wished to see our hero. He waved to the prince from the crowd and smiled, recognizing that in a place of development and socialization like the academy, connections were formed from the very first day. As our protagonist, Li Han, observed the prince's enthusiastic smile, he contemplated the appropriateness of addressing him as Imperial Highness. The emperor's vast number of children, over 100 in total, made Li Han question the significance given to the firstborn in the imperial family. In fact, the emperor showed no support for his children at all, making their situation even more challenging. In places like this, where numerous children from influential families abound, the imperial family held lower standing than even Yonner's Macon house. Thus, Li Han found himself wondering why Yonner was behaving in such a manner. Yonner asked Li Han if he would accompany her, prompting him to notice nobles whispering about why she was aiding a nameless prince. Despite this gossip, Li Han accepted Yonner's offer and shook her hand, symbolizing their newfound friendship. He believed that forging alliances and making friends was preferable to creating adversaries. Yonner blushed with happiness as Li Han was the first to accept her proposal. However, this revelation caught Li Han off guard, and he held his forehead, displaying disappointment, while the prince and Yonner laughed. The prince in question was Gainando, the 97th Imperial Prince. Although there were rumors that he might be the 101st, he strongly insisted on being recognized as the 97th, as he was reluctant to be associated with the higher numbers. Lost in thought, Li Han was approached by Gainando, who inquired if he had been listening. Apologizing for being lost in his own thoughts, the young man asked him to repeat himself. In doing so, he inadvertently revealed that someone had rejected the prince's offer. The hero suggested that the person might not have been aware of the prince's prestigious background, emphasizing the significance of a grand lineage. The prideful prince agreed. The young man berated himself for his own stupidity and immaturity. After the nobles rejected Gainando's proposal, they are now engaged in a conversation with Adenard. Adenard is approximately the 44th imperial princess, or thereabouts. Li Han points out that Adenard possesses the elegance expected of a member of the imperial family, which naturally attracts followers. In contrast, someone else lacks that quality. Suddenly, Gainando has an idea and asks Li Han to look after Princess Adenard later, highlighting Li Han's tall and well-built physique. Li Han responds by stating that noble individuals do not harass others. Gainando clarifies that he is not asking Li Han to harass her, but rather to discipline her. Li Han swiftly replies that noble people do not engage in such behavior either. Curious about what he should do first, the young man asked for guidance. The boy suggested forgiving those who had rejected him or challenging them to a duel if forgiveness was not an option. However, the prince grew apprehensive and proposed that they not take things so far. He opted for forgiveness, as befitting a majestic prince. The girl admired the young man's ability to control his temper, contrasting it with her own relative's inability to do so. While they acknowledged their relation, the young man questioned why she was going to such lengths for him. The girl promised to reveal the reasons behind her actions later. At that moment, the magic skull appeared and inquired if the steelheads had enjoyed their conversation. Someone in the crowd exclaimed that it was the lich they had seen at the gate, a creature born from a powerful mage's obsession with conquering death. The hero was astonished to find the director himself in lich form. The director asked the students why he referred to them as steelheads. The princess explained that it was because the symbol for this year was steel. The director awarded her dormitory 10 points, delighting her with the existence of a dormitory assessment system. However, the director quickly dashed her excitement, stating that to become magicians, they must learn to differentiate truth from falsehoods. The girl grew angry, arguing that the first year symbol truly was steel, a versatile material dependent on processing and suitable for beginners. Someone in the crowd was startled, and the skull chuckled, revealing that they had once again fallen for the deception. The true reason for the term, steelheads, was that they were all clueless fools without an ounce of knowledge in their heads. The director's shout froze the entire crowd, rendering them unable to object due to the overwhelming magical energy in the area. Despite the initial shock, the hero gradually acclimated to the situation. He stretched his shoulders and turned around as the skull acknowledged his ability to move with such density of mana. The director expressed surprise, and everyone's attention shifted to the left where the dining room door opened. Inside, tables were beautifully set with an array of delicious food: white bread, succulent roasted chicken seasoned with wine, flavorful casseroles, and much more. As they began to eat, however, the food vanished, and the director laughed once again. They had been led astray, and he declared that it was time for them to gather themselves. He had heard that becoming a lich resulted in losing something, and he was certain that the headmaster had sacrificed a great deal. The academy served as the birthplace of magicians and provided significant opportunities for aspiring mages. Suddenly, the skull shouted, and food and clothing fell from above, claiming it was their sustenance and attire. Loaves of bread, plates of porridge, and gray robes descended upon them. The headmaster attempted to reason with the skull, but he didn't anticipate such a reaction. The skull retorted that if they didn't like their meals, they should learn magic and create delicious food themselves. Similarly, if they disliked their clothing and wands, they should utilize magic. The director sternly reminded them that these were the rules of the academy. A student mentioned that they could request items from their families, but the headmaster declared that first-year students were forbidden from seeking assistance from older students. He emphasized that everyone was free but wished the steelheads good luck, hoping they would become great wizards. Li Han, lost in his own thoughts, couldn't comprehend why there were such eccentric teachers in this place. He had encountered a similar glint of madness in his past life's professor. The prince approached him, expressing his confusion about the treatment they received and the harsh living conditions. Li Han, still contemplating, believed that the lich provided better provisions than his previous professor. The lich not only supplied food but also clothing, making life here potentially more favorable. The prince became frustrated with Li Han's inattentiveness, explaining that in noble society, little was known about the Vardanian clan. They focused solely on magic and avoided interacting with others, leading to misconceptions about the clan. The prince remained indignant, pointing out that even his servants lived in better conditions. He patted Li Han's shoulder, tears in his eyes, and invited him to stay at his mansion whenever he desired. Li Han expressed gratitude for the invitation and suggested heading towards the dormitory. The academy accepted students based on talent, regardless of their social status. However, to prevent conflicts among teenagers, the dormitories were divided into 4 towers based on origin. The proud Blue Dragon Tower was exclusively for individuals from noble families, including honorary nobles like Li Han or the imperial family. The Tower of the Unquenchable Phoenix was reserved for those dedicated to the sacred flame, such as priests of different faiths. The Tower of the Thunder White Tiger housed individuals with strong spirits, including children from knight families who followed both the path of a knight and a wizard. The Tower of the All-Seeing Black Turtle accommodated those with infinite patience, encompassing a diverse range of people, including commoners, servants, slaves, buffoons, beggars, merchants, and lower nobility. Residents from other towers often disregarded individuals from this tower due to their lower status, but there were exceptions. Li Han believed that they would make ideal business partners. As Li Han noticed some boys laughing at him from behind, he thought it best to befriend them, considering that business was the most effective way to earn money and gain experience. The boys found it amusing why he was staring at them, and Li Han believed that befriending them would be beneficial. However, when the boys learned about Li Han's background, they grew apprehensive, and someone warned against making eye contact with him, claiming it was dangerous. Startled by their reaction, Li Han wondered why his appearance was unsettling to them. Yeonar, the girl from his company, reassured him that he exuded the aura of a respectable aristocrat. The boys seemed unaware of the notoriety surrounding Li Han's lineage. Suddenly, the prince arrived, reprimanding them for leaving him alone. He recalled that he had asked Yeonar something earlier. She explained that she was looking after Li Han due to his mother. When they were children, Yeonar accidentally spilled a drink on the Empress's dress, and she feared it would spell disaster for the Mackin family. But the Empress reassured her and said it was all right, proving everyone wrong. Yeonar revealed that the Empress was actually incredibly wealthy. She generously rewarded Yeonar for her friendly behavior towards the prince, giving her a significant amount of money. The boy was taken aback by the unexpected gesture and hadn't anticipated such a reward. However, upon hearing about it, he thought that if it was true, he should also try to befriend the prince. The students decided to go outside to the park, which was part of the academy grounds. In addition to the academic buildings, the park featured a lake, a forest, and mountains. It seemed that the director's statement about doing everything themselves wasn't just a joke. Lee Han overheard some students discussing whether they would reach the Blue Dragon Tower, which turned out to be their dormitory, by going in a certain direction. A girl approached the group and confirmed that it was indeed their dorm. As Lee Han looked up, he realized that it was a small and pitiful gray tower, quite different from the grandeur of the prince's estate. The students expressed their disappointment with the accommodation, feeling that it would be cramped for all of them. Upon entering the building, Lee Han found it damp and dark, further dampening his spirits. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation, and everyone around him disappeared. Confused, he wondered what had happened and where everyone had gone. Someone addressed him, greeting the little wizard. Lee Han looked around and noticed a multitude of stars, as if he were in the sky. It dawned on him that this was to be expected at a magic academy. The dormitory itself was a magical tower. He asked the person where he could go, and they informed him that currently, he could only access a private room and a special meeting lounge. There were other places to explore, but the director had placed restrictions on them for now. Lee Han requested to be sent to a private room, and he was promptly teleported away to his assigned accommodation. In the room, he discovered a book that explained that, in addition to the core subjects, students could choose disciplines according to their preference. The final decision on which disciplines to pursue would be made after a trial month. One page of the book emphasized that magicians were individuals who sought to understand the fundamentals of the world and that while others could offer help, each person must make their own decisions and forge their own path. The page was signed by Osu Gonadalts, the name of their director. Lee Han realized that the academy wasn't as difficult as he had initially thought. It was easier compared to graduate school, and his private room was equipped with everything he needed. While others seemed perplexed by the living conditions, Lee Han found them satisfactory. In the recreation hall, the other students were engaged in their own discussions. Lee Han wondered where the others planned to focus their studies. Yeoner expressed her interest in studying alchemy, sharing her dream of opening a workshop and supplying products to the imperial castle. She invited Lee Han to work with her, but he hesitated, considering alchemy a challenging field. He told her he would think about it, aware of the cutthroat competition and various unethical practices prevalent in the empire's alchemy industry. Lee Han disclosed that his primary goal was to become an imperial officer, emphasizing the importance of academic performance and qualifications. He believed that securing a stable position in a niche field would be the best approach. He wanted to choose a discipline that would allow him to achieve good grades more easily. He suspected that his response would disappoint the passionate Yeoner, who seemed to have higher ambitions. At that moment, the prince rushed in, claiming that his room had been robbed, and there was nothing left in it. While the other students laughed, the prince persisted in his belief and tried to prove the existence of the thief. The next day, Lee Han read a book on the basics of magic, the primary subject for first-year students. He also learned that each dorm had its own schedule. As they walked together, Lee Han noticed that the other students appeared tired and sleep-deprived. One of the girls mentioned that they longed for proper beds, and the prince expressed his frustration with his unruly hair. Lee Han couldn't help but compare the academy's conditions to his previous life and felt that it was much better here. Lee Han reminisces about his past life and notices that mealtime is not scheduled for him. They only distribute one energy bar per person. His classmate tries to reassure him that they will have a feast later, but Lee Han remains skeptical, jokingly threatening to harm his classmate if it turns out to be just ramen. However, when the time comes, it is indeed only a cup of ramen, leaving him disappointed. Returning to the present reality, Lee Han smiles, acknowledging that it is still better than his previous life. However, the nobles around him are not accustomed to such modest meals. The lecture hall, located on the first floor, gave the students pause as they feared the presence of a massive blue figure inside. It turned out to be a troll, but unlike the ferocious and dangerous reputation associated with trolls, this one was well dressed and seemed friendly. He introduced himself as Garcia Kim, a half-troll. He acknowledged their fear and assured them that he didn't eat people, though he playfully added that he might do so if he got hungry. The prince, filled with fear, was reassured by the half-troll who clarified that his previous statement was just a joke. Excusing himself, the teacher began a lecture, explaining that most of the students present had never used magic before. He emphasized that magic was dangerous and could only be used by adults. However, all of the students had been granted the title of Steel Seed, indicating their potential. The purpose of the lecture was to enlighten the students about magic and help them discover their aptitude for different types of magic. The teacher acknowledged that the path of a magician was difficult and challenging, but expressed a desire to guide the students. He reassured them that not all the professors at the academy were as eccentric as the headmaster. The lecture started with the basics, as the teacher asked the students what magic truly was. One girl responded that magic was a wizard's desire to change the world through their will. The teacher commended her answer, explaining that magic involved using the fundamental force of magic energy, known as mana, to bring about change in the world. He mentioned that all the students who had come to the academy possessed talent to sense mana, but using it required going beyond that and being able to summon and manipulate it. The teacher stressed that while casting spells or performing movements were commonly associated with magic, the most important aspect was one's will. He urged the students not to forget this. Recognizing the need for practice, he asked everyone to stand up, raise their wands, and gather mana. He instructed them to conjure light while collecting mana. Li Han felt a sense of joy as the practice finally began, while Yeoner struggled with the task. The teacher explained that managing magical energy was akin to riding a wild, galloping horse, and losing control even for a moment could have dire consequences. While the students concentrated to prevent the magic from dissipating, the teacher demonstrated by waving his wand and uttering the word, light, resulting in a bright glow that temporarily blinded the students. The teacher instructed the students to say anything that came to mind while casting spells, emphasizing that shorter spells were easier to sustain. Li Han grasped the essence of magic, collecting magic energy, transforming it with one's will, and then casting a spell. Although understanding alone wouldn't be enough, he observed that the other students faced difficulties, losing control of their wands or encountering other mishaps. The prince experienced his mana moving on its own, but the teacher intervened, reassuring him that as long as there was a teacher present, they had nothing to fear. The teacher emphasized that even if they ran out of mana, they could try again however, he warned them to be cautious about losing control. With each attempt, the number of students practicing diminished. After the 5th and 6th attempts, only one student remained, Li Han. He raised his hand and asked if he should continue since he was the only one remaining. The rest of the class lay motionless on their desks. The teacher acknowledged that they were already on their 7th attempt, and even the outstanding first-year students were running out of mana. He mentioned a tribe from the east that referred to magical energy as ether, and how it was a source of magical power. Novice magicians often faced a lack of magic energy due to the mana cost of spells. However, Li Han seemed unaffected, even during the 7th attempt. When asked for his name, Li Han provided a name other than his family name, earning favor with the professor for demonstrating the principle of equality. The teacher asked him to come forward and took his hand, causing him to feel as if he was submerged in a vast expanse of water. The professor briefly paused, assuring Li Han that nothing had happened, and resumed the lesson. The prince, fearing that something would happen to Li Han, whispered her concerns to another student who urged her to remain quiet. After concluding the lecture, the teacher thanked the students for their participation and praised their efforts. Li Han went to the teacher's office as agreed, wanting to discuss something with him. The teacher mentioned that he had heard about Li Han from the director, the eccentric Lich. The man was frightened, but he needn't worry. The director appeared eccentric, but he was actually a good person, though the students were unaware of it. However, he was very attentive and informed the professors every year about new students he had spoken highly of. One of the students he had mentioned was Li Han, describing him as foolish. While this might not seem significant, there was a well-known saying in the East, "The wise man appears foolish on the surface." Perhaps the headmaster was trying to convey that he saw great potential in Li Han. Curious about what kind of student Li Han was, the half-troll wondered if she could share her thoughts with him. However, she couldn't openly communicate that he possessed significant magical power. Yet, that was the topic they wanted to discuss with him. It was no small matter. The teacher couldn't even fathom the extent of his abilities. Mana, which indicated a mage's talent, was one of the indicators, and if one had an abundance of it, it meant complete freedom of action and great talent. Li Han realized that having excessive mana wasn't necessarily bad, but controlling such a vast amount was incredibly difficult. However, the professor expressed disappointment, and Li Han inquired about the reason. The professor explained that while having a substantial amount of mana was generally beneficial, Li Han had an excessive amount of it. They compared magic energy to water in a glass, stating that it is easier to control when the amount is moderate. However, Li Han would face difficulties due to the overwhelming amount of mana he possessed. This revelation shocked him, as the fundamental principle of magic, the control of magic energy, was now unreasonably challenging for him. Overwhelmed by frustration, Li Han sank to the ground in disappointment. In an attempt to assist him, the professor provided him with a bracelet that could absorb magic, which would offer some help for the time being. Li Han expressed gratitude to his professor, believing that as long as he had the bracelet, it wouldn't be a significant issue. However, the professor countered, stating that it was indeed a significant problem, as otherwise, she would not have called him there in the first place. He met with his friends, feeling desperate as his future seemed uncertain. He needed to study well and obtain good grades. Curious about the electives available to his friends, Li Han asked if they had alchemy. The girl replied affirmatively, but he scoffed, considering it a field only fit for servants. Yeoner became angry due to Gainendo's statement that alchemy was only meant for servants. She requested Li Han to temporarily step aside, leaving Gainendo confused. Yeoner then delivered a powerful punch to Gainendo, causing him to be sent flying, warning him never to ask for a potion while he was in the infirmary again. Li Han was taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. He had gained some knowledge of combat from his sword lessons with Aurarlong, and in his opinion, Yeoner's punch was a perfect 10 out of 10. On their way to the basic alchemy comprehension class, Li Han questioned whether it was wrong for her to hit him like that. She promised to apologize the next day, as it wasn't the first time she had done something like that. As they approached the classroom, he noticed many students ahead, particularly those from the Black Turtle Tower. While he didn't care, he worried about their gazes. When a commoner encountered an aristocrat, it usually led to one of two things: either they didn't want to get involved or they displayed hostility. The students whispered that they shouldn't stare at him, but there was little he could do within the school setting. If he acted too friendly, it wouldn't lead to anything good. Someone inquired if everyone had arrived, and as Li Han turned his head, he saw the director and Professor Half-Troll. The sight of them made him fall silent. The director, a short-bearded dwarf named Ergen Guadur, also known as Professor Argolm, stood before them. They could address him as Professor Argolm. Li Han couldn't help but wonder why they were all gathered on the field without any desks. The girl suggested it was to sense the mana of nature, as understanding the force of nature was crucial for an alchemist. However, the professor disagreed, which angered the girl. Li Han interjected, suggesting that they were there to collect ingredients. His answer turned out to be correct, earning a malicious look from the girl. He thought she wouldn't compete with him on this matter. The purpose of their gathering was to learn what it took to become an alchemist. While most students might believe that alchemy only required intelligence and the ability to control mana, the professor emphasized that the crucial skill for an alchemist was the ability to gather ingredients. The princess added that materials could be ordered or grown, but merely understanding the importance of collecting wasn't enough. However, before she could finish her point, the professor grew furious, and the students began whispering. The princess was right, they shouldn't have acted that way, as it was peculiar. The professor scolded them, claiming they knew nothing about the real world, and then sat down in front of some sprouts, stating that they couldn't grow everything themselves. Furthermore, 10% of the required materials couldn't be purchased at all. That was why alchemists often traveled with adventurers. They were skilled at unearthing priceless herbs, while alchemists themselves turned into fools in that regard. The alchemist needs to be able to personally gather the materials. Without learning this skill, they won't achieve anything. The professor hopes that he has explained it clearly. They have now moved on to practice after distributing leaves with a picture of the plant. The professor instructed Li Han to bring the leaf to him. Despite his prestige, there were many unpleasant rumors circulating about him. One such rumor was that students were dying from using magic. While it's true that magic can be dangerous and accidents can happen, it is completely irresponsible to send children to such a perilous place. It was a potentially dangerous situation for two people, and there should have been at least 3 of them. As they sat in the woods, Li Han and the girl discussed the princess. It seemed difficult to be on the same team as her, especially since she had already formed her own group with students from the Black Turtle Tower. Although the Black Turtle Tower students avoided Li Han, the girl mentioned that the princess was popular even before entering the academy. She was known for her extraordinary intelligence, talent, and charisma, which attracted people regardless of their status. Li Han and the girl needed to assemble their own team, and the only students left were from the Black Turtle Tower. Despite their dislike for Li Han, it was too dangerous to go alone. They needed someone who could watch their backs, and their eyes fell on Nilia, a dark elf from the Black Turtle Tower and a member of the Shadow Guard Patrol. The Shadow Guard was composed of experienced hunters and scouts who worked in the northern mountain range and were familiar with the area. The forest was like a playground for Nilia. It was remarkable to see so many outstanding students among the newcomers. Now it was Nilia's time to shine. As the boys approached Nilia, the girl introduced herself, and Li Han expressed his pleasure in meeting her. They asked Nilia to join them, explaining that it was dangerous to venture into the forest alone in case of a monster attack. Nilia was initially skeptical, thinking that they had ulterior motives, as she believed all nobles were the same. However, they assured her that they genuinely wanted to help and protect her. She realized the wisdom in their words and agreed to go with them. As they walked, Li Han observed Nilia and admired her skills as a hunter. He noticed her well-developed calf muscles and calloused palms, indicating her experience in hunting and archery. Nilia wondered how he could discern these details with such accuracy, to which Li Han jokingly attributed it to his ability to see through people. In reality, he had noticed the Shadow Guard badge on her belt. The boys struggled to keep up with Nilia's pace and asked her to slow down. They explained that Li Han was the one who could identify the herbs they needed, and without Nilia's guidance, they would be unable to find them. Reluctantly, Nilia agreed and also recognized Li's ability to distinguish herbs, acknowledging him as their guide. This prompted the boys to question Li Han's role in the team. He admitted that he didn't have any particular skills but was there to protect them. The girl speculated that Li Han came from a noble family of knights, which explained his physical build. However, she found it strange that he was in the Blue Tower. Li Han revealed that he was from House Vardanas and saw it as an opportunity to get closer to his family's legacy. This revelation alarmed Nilia, as there were unsettling rumors surrounding the Vardanas family. The patriarch of the Vardanas dragon family was said to have burned everything to the ground with his breath during a past incident. The family had made a pact with ancient spirits, granting them magical abilities but at the cost of losing their emotions. As a result, the Vardanas family was known for their ruthlessness. The girl reassured Nilia that there was nothing to worry about, as the rumors seemed exaggerated. The hunters hadn't heard about these rumors, and it appeared that there was nothing alarming about Li Han. As they continued their journey, the girl noticed footprints along the way. Judging by the shallow tracks, someone had tried to be stealthy. The girl wondered who it could be, but no one responded enthusiastically. She realized that she needed to get accustomed to someone from outside her village showing interest in such matters. To her surprise, the guy who approached her was from a prominent family and had an interest in wildlife. She cautioned everyone to be cautious when they noticed such tracks, not only because they were from a creature with huge footprints, but also because it was difficult to predict who might appear in that location. She had heard rumors about various monsters lurking within the academy, as the land was filled with mana, making the appearance of monsters inevitable. There were also creatures that had emerged from experiments and rare slugs created from discarded magic potions, making the area unsafe. The frightened boy suggested they follow the tracks to reduce the risk of being ambushed. The young man asked for the huntress's guidance in distinguishing the tracks, acknowledging that it wouldn't be easy and he might give up halfway through. He promised to do his best if she would assist him, and she agreed. After an extensive search, they finally found traces of a creature called Dohik. The huntress expressed disappointment that they found only 2 traces but remained optimistic that they would find more soon, suggesting they continue their search. As they moved forward, the girl noticed the boys standing in a fighting stance, looking shocked and focused on something. She asked what had happened, and when she turned around, she saw a massive boar approaching them. The guy had no other weapons except for his magic, so he took out his wand, which transformed into a large staff according to the owner's wishes. The huntress admired his magical prowess, as he came from the Vardanas family, known for producing great magicians in the empire. However, if he couldn't protect them, Nilia suggested that Li Han should seize Yonner and make a quick escape. Nelia would serve as a distraction, leading the threat away from them. Owner was touched by the girl's willingness to protect them and expressed his gratitude, stating that he was counting on her. The girl wondered what type of magic the guy would use to defeat the monster. When he was 10 years old, he should have learned that swords were among the most effective weapons, but proficiency with other equipment was equally important in any situation. Only those who mastered it could focus their mana into the weapon, known as the aura level. However, the teacher hadn't informed the boy that only a few people had reached this level, fearing it would disappoint him. The boy questioned the purpose of training his aura if his goal was to become a magician rather than working in an office. He expressed his skepticism to the teacher, who froze in response, realizing that the boy was different from other nobles who merely dreamt without taking action. The teacher believed he could assist the boy in reaching the level of using aura. The boy reminisced about his training sessions with the teacher and stabbed the predator with a spear, causing it to die. The girls were astonished by his action, as he hadn't used magic. The girl asked where his magic was. Owner explained that his staff was powerful enough to be used in close combat, but defeating a monster that had transformed into a boar would typically require magic. However, in this instance, his subconscious use of mana had aided him, even though he was far from mastering mana usage. Owner expressed his exhaustion from the stress and questioned whether lessons had to be so intense. He also wondered why students were allowed to venture into such dangerous areas. As they turned around, they noticed a commotion behind them and realized that another monster was attacking the disciples below on the mountain. One of the guys, Ashen Dalcard, declared that he would fight the monster alone, relying on his family's exceptional problem-solving abilities. The Dalcard family had served as advisors to the Emperor for generations, while Ashen's family consisted of premiers and treasurers. Since he was a Dalcard, he could be counted on, and he seemed skilled in swordsmanship. Observed Ashen as he fought, noting his calculated moves and ability to escape the monster's attacks. Ashen managed to land a hit on the monster, but it merely left a scratch, provoking the creature's wrath. The monster struck back, sending Ashen flying several tens of meters away. At this point, the monster turned its attention towards the two defenseless girls. However, the princess positioned herself in front of them, ready to protect them. She planned to study the monster's breathing pattern as it charged towards them. Suddenly, the boar collapsed to the ground. It had been attacking a boar, but luckily, it hadn't noticed them. It was important to approach from the windward side. This was the first time he was relying on Nilia's advice in battle. The princess thanked him for his help and promised to repay the debt. He took the opportunity to ask her for a favor, to let him know if there were any lessons where he could easily get good grades. He assumed she had connections that could make it easier for him. The girl was surprised by his request, not understanding what he meant. She couldn't comprehend why someone from such a prestigious family would want to avoid studying or cheat. Someone mentioned that there was a person who was knowledgeable about such matters and knew better than anyone else. The guy felt an ominous premonition and trembled. Suddenly, the professor appeared behind him, claiming that it was alchemy. It seemed he had encountered a professor with a master's degree from his previous life. He was no longer an inexperienced student. If someone was passionate about alchemy, the professor said he could help them fall in love with it. The guy declined and said he would look into other lessons. The students started whispering, impressed by the professor's pursuit. The princess became angry, but she knew it was something that usually happened. The guy approached the dead boar and declared that the lesson for the day was over. Unfortunately, the other groups hadn't encountered such creatures. It turned out that the professor had intentionally exposed them to the monsters because he couldn't simply send them to collect ingredients. The lesson topic for the day was dealing with unforeseen circumstances they might face while searching for herbs. As alchemists, they had to be prepared to cope with any difficulties, whether it involved fighting, killing, dodging, escaping, or hiding. The students were angry with the teacher, and the guy was upset that the professor didn't actually need the doha grass. They had gone through all that trouble for nothing. The teacher was surprised that they had managed to find it. He considered them talented students who should attend his classes, especially Li Han. The professor approached him and put his arm around his shoulder, saying that he would give him a special privilege since he had killed a boar and found the doha grass. He had a cabin near the woods that Li Han could visit anytime this semester. The teacher wanted him to become a protege. The guy sarcastically remarked if the teacher wanted him to become a maid. He clarified that his offer was essentially a food pass. While the others might not realize it now, In a week's time, survival would be challenging with the standard food. Lee Han realized that this was an opportunity to stock up on food at the teacher's house. In the clearing in front of the house, they began butchering the dead boar. However, for one person, it was too difficult. The owner decided to help. The huntress was surprised by how well the guy was doing, wondering if they taught this in his family. They removed the skin, cut out the flesh, and hung it on wooden beams. They planned to use the guts for sausages, so they didn't throw them away. The girl suggested preparing blanks, and the guy decided to smoke the meat, as it would preserve it even in the cold weather. The teacher was amazed at how far the young man had come in just 3 days of training. It was beyond his expectations. Lee Han asked the teacher for butter and bread and started cooking something. They were thanked for the lunch, and the professor even gave them a gift of jam. Everyone enjoyed the meal amidst the beautiful nature and good company of friends. They had plenty of meat left, so the huntress suggested sharing it with the other students from the tower. The students reached a consensus that selling the meat was a good idea, except for the girl who didn't propose it. Most of the students in the Blue Dragon Tower were wealthy nobles, so purchasing the meat wouldn't be an issue for them. They had a preference for not accepting things for free. The guy desired to earn a significant amount of money and live a comfortable life, while the girl aimed to save as much as possible for the workshop's sake. Both of them had unconventional perspectives. However, Nelia was unaware of this at the moment, and she was outraged by the guy's decision to sell the meat. She grabbed the package and stated that she would distribute it to her friends without charge. The two men warned her that she might regret it because friendships could end, but wealth remains. They sat under a tree, and the professor contemplated how these 3 students, although talented, could also be troublemakers and would become a headache for him. The story takes place in the vainglorious Blue Dragon Tower, located in a remote area away from the main territories, offering students fresh forest air. However, this day was an exception. The students noticed a different smell, which turned out to be Yeoner and Lee Han cooking meat. Everyone's eyes lit up, but there was a catch: each piece of meat required payment of 2 silver coins, with the guys setting the price higher than elsewhere. Nonetheless, they managed to sell a substantial amount since the students had limited options for eating meat. The guy and the girl laughed triumphantly, realizing they were in a favorable position. The prince, who was starving, noticed the meat from a distance and rushed over. The young man greeted his friend and offered him food, but then Lee Han immediately stopped him and asked for 1 silver coin. The prince was surprised that his friend was charging for food since it went against the nobility's pride of not providing free meals. Yet, the young man had no money and presented a loan agreement, requesting the prince's signature. Initially, the prince clenched the pen angrily, but then he burst into tears, expressing gratitude for having such a kind friend and acknowledging their genuine friendship. That concluded a good day for everyone. Later, there was a lesson on the basics of magic and personality education, which the nobles found unnecessary, considering their perfection. The headmaster himself would be the teacher for this lesson. He noticed that the students had finally managed to eat, as they had been without food for a month. One of the students objected, but the headmaster silenced him magically. He was glad that the students had come to accept their situation, even though the Blue Dragon Tower always took longer to adapt to changes due to its lack of hardship. The headmaster was impressed by the students' resilience. He knew that Lee Han was behind it all, recognizing his uniqueness compared to the others. He wondered how someone so different and flexible could come from such a family. Considering flexibility and free thinking as vital qualities for a wizard, the headmaster always placed his students in difficult situations. A student inquired about the significance of the class for their future. In response, the professor turned the question back to the student, who admitted to not having an idea. The professor exclaimed that the importance of this class lies in the fact that when graduates from the school create troubles outside the academy, the emperor holds the professor accountable. This revelation shocked the students as they listened. The professor went on to explain that the students were unaware of the numerous problems caused by their predecessors. The character education provided in this class would serve as the professor's excuse when seniors inevitably caused trouble or displayed unpleasant behavior in the future, ensuring that the professor would not be unfairly punished. Upon shouting if the students understood, one student expressed surprise and exclaimed that they did, indeed, comprehend the situation. The teacher asked the students to open their textbooks and read the first page aloud, stating that they wouldn't use magic to harm ordinary people. The headmaster urged them to say it louder, and they all shouted their commitment. The director hoped that this lesson would make them kinder. He then requested 2 volunteers to assist him, emphasizing that things would worsen if no one responded. Lee Han stood up and agreed, believing it could be useful to him. When asked if he wanted to stand out, the guy replied that it would be an honor to help a respected teacher. The director disliked flattery, but he acknowledged that opportunities open up only to those who take initiative. The prince was deeply worried for his friend, knowing that the unpredictable director was capable of anything. The guy comforted the boy, assuring him that the heir was sacrificing himself for their benefit. The prince felt compelled to step up and volunteer, but a member of the Dalcard family managed to volunteer before him. Being skilled in handling documents, the guy turned to our hero and explained that it was a form of repayment for past assistance, emphasizing his family's proficiency in calculations. While the headmaster was pleased that the two had become friends, he had other tasks in mind for them. He requested that they rewrite the student safety rules for the next lesson. As darkness fell, the boy couldn't forgive the headmaster for assigning such a seemingly insignificant task when it could easily be done with magic. His anger burned like fire, and Lee Han worried that he might faint. The boy believed that the headmaster had deliberately set them up, thinking that they would resort to using magic and fail since they couldn't conjure even a simple light. He wondered if the headmaster had any conscience and left them a clue. Determined to find a solution, the boy left his desk and approached the teacher's desk in search of a glimmer of hope. Lee Han saw nothing wrong with using magic in this instance, considering it the headmaster's lecture hall. He suggested they act as thieves for once, and they split up to search. They discovered a glowing box and beckoned to Shan to join them. Upon opening the box, the headmaster's apparition emerged, stating that their completion of the task was indicated by opening it. He urged them to grasp its significance quickly, warning that failure to do so would render them pitiful. Inside the drawer, they found a piece of paper that could be used to learn basic control of first-level magic. Shan indignantly questioned the headmaster's training methods and proposed writing a complaint, but Lee Han paid no heed. After studying the paper carefully, the boy turned to his friend, realizing that filing a complaint against the eccentric headmaster wouldn't be effective. He believed that the 5 remaining minutes were crucial and suggested they train using the piece of paper. The paper emphasized the importance of will, spell movements, and basic control. They attempted to move a feather but struggled, and Shan's mana began to deplete, leaving him fatigued. Casting magic was proving to be challenging, as it required precise movements and a deep understanding of mana. The boy reminded himself to concentrate, treating it as his final opportunity to meet a deadline. He likened his focus to a bamboo forest and the feather to a light object. Pointing his wand at the feather, he uttered the incantation, "Move," and it soared into the air. Everything worked out, leaving his friend astounded by his unusual abilities. However, as they tried to control the feather, it unexpectedly flew out of the window and sliced an apple hanging from a tree. The two friends were faced with 2 magic-related problems. They needed to cast a spell and maintain their focus to control the object. Despite the challenges, the boy resolved to try again. Just as he gained control over the feather, the headmaster appeared. The boy accidentally directed the feather towards the headmaster, causing both boys to panic. Shan admired the audacity of their actions, while Lee Han urged him to remain calm mentally. Fortunately, the feather veered away from the headmaster, who remarked that they were quickly adapting. He acknowledged their progress, albeit with a touch of disdain, referring to them as good enough for idiots. Relieved by the headmaster's response, the boy wondered if that was all he would say and considered asking for some advice on managing magic. The boy successfully completed the spell, and the headmaster responded that controlling the object was indeed more challenging. He assured the boy that difficulties were common for beginners and encouraged him to discover his own unique approach. With a bow of gratitude, the boy expressed his intention to train further. Meanwhile, the skull believed that the boy's interest in magic was becoming obsessive and advised him not to worry and to proceed to lunch. The headmaster lifted the student into the air and teleported him, much to the hero's indignation. The hero was frustrated that teleportation was not used when needed, but now the headmaster had sent him to the dining room. Due to overexertion, Aoken was teleported to the clinic, missing lunch. When the hero arrived at the dining room, there was no one there, but at least there was food on the table. He still had some smoked meat left. Suddenly, the princess appeared out of nowhere and brought him the piece of paper he had asked for earlier. The paper had popular lecture topics written on it, including alchemy, which confused the hero since it wasn't listed as one of the most popular subjects. He told the princess that there might have been a misunderstanding because he wanted easy subjects to get good grades on. The princess didn't understand at first, but he explained that popular subjects are difficult to excel in due to high competition, while unpopular subjects are easier because there are fewer competitors. Adenard was taken aback, realizing that Li Han had been seeking easier lectures all along. She had initially believed that Li Han embodied the ideals of nobility, but now she realized that she had misunderstood. Adenard reached into her pocket and revealed that while organizing the lectures, she had also compiled a list of unpopular subjects to avoid. Li Han expressed his delight, stating that he could sense the unpopularity just from the contents. These included basic swordsmanship, which was rarely pursued by those attending a magic academy, and basic magic combat, which held little interest for students seeking deeper truths. Li Han had intended to become a battle magician, and he thanked Adenard, addressing her as Your Imperial Highness, for her understanding and assistance. Adenard made the decision to depart and bid him farewell. The next morning, as he walked down the corridor, he regretted that everyone refused to participate in unpopular lectures because they didn't see the point in it. He realized that in order to focus on the important classes, he needed subjects that he didn't have to worry about. He considered it a compromise. The lecture hall for magic battles was in the basement, and although the stairs looked normal, there was something strange about the place. He knew that people in the Empire believed that once you entered the magic tower, you might not be able to leave. Despite the curiosity of newcomers, he decided to explore the academy and go down to the basement since it was just a school after all. As he reached the first floor of the main building, the director appeared behind him and asked if he was going to the first floor of the dungeon. The hero was scared by the director's unexpected appearance but replied with great honor. However, the director had nothing to say to him and warned that if his corpse was found the next day, he would put a flower on the grave. The hero thought to himself that the director was a complete jerk for smiling while harboring resentment and hatred. There were torches on the walls, and the sign on the ceiling looked intimidating. The hero saw other students nearby and was relieved that he wouldn't be alone. However, he soon realized that they had come to the wrong place and almost got into trouble. They quickly decided to leave, questioning why anyone would attend such classes. When he entered the lecture hall, he saw 3 more students who seemed to be there against their will. There was a blue ball on each table, and the teacher, a vampire named Blood Greg, sat on a chair behind them. The hero was initially afraid when the teacher asked him to sit down and start the lesson. The teacher explained that the items on their tables were made from Spirit Star Stone, a mana-sensitive ore. He instructed the class to fill the balls with their mana. The hero doubted whether he could do it since he couldn't even use the basic mana spell yet, but to his surprise, the ball flew up into the air from him and the other students. He couldn't believe it was so easy and wondered if the Spirit Star Stone was actually an artifact. Noticing the markings on the ball, he was reassured that the teacher had made them himself. Leon had heard that well-made artifacts could be sold at a high price. One of the students' balloons flew into the ceiling, causing her to be very scared as it could break through. However, the teacher had cast a spell on the ball to prevent it from destroying the lecture hall. The girl calmed down, relieved that the spell was in place. But at that moment, the ball hit her, causing her to fall. The spell, it seemed, did not apply to the students. The teacher sympathized and mentioned that they should try not to break the ball, perhaps implying that they should be careful not to harm themselves. The professor urged the students to make the ball float again. As Li Han attempted to do so, he noticed that the professor seemed challenging to approach, as if intentionally ignoring the girl. The professor's next instruction was to draw a circle using the ball. Li Han thought to himself that even though it was an artifact, it was still difficult to control and move as he desired. One student managed to create a somewhat imperfect circle but was happy to inform the professor of their achievement. However, the professor instructed them to do it again. The room fell silent for a moment, and reluctantly, the student agreed. Li Han wondered if this was what they would be doing throughout the entire class. Feeling a sense of frustration, he stood up and asked the professor how long they would have to keep drawing circles. The professor responded that they would continue until they could produce a perfect circle, obviously. 2 students who desperately wanted to leave the class pretended to request permission to use the restroom. However, the professor stated that they did not need to ask for permission. As the students stood up to leave, a girl with purple hair observed them. In her thoughts, She also wished to join them, but she appeared weakened and unable to speak loudly. Suddenly, the girl collapsed. Li Han realized that she had gone to such lengths to act in order to leave the room. Unbeknownst to him, the girl's mana had been depleted due to a previous hit she had endured.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.